Hello again, friends, and welcome to Gamecock Central Radio. Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell to preview the South Carolina-Clemson game that's coming up on Saturday. It'll be a 7:35 kickoff at Memorial Stadium in Clemson. Television provided by ESPN this Saturday. Wes, good to have you today. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Hard to believe that the final regular season game here, kind of wrapping my head around that, I guess you could say, but this game is always exciting. I know South Carolina's a big underdog, but I'm very, very curious to see if they can hang around in this.
Will Muschamp held his pre-Clemson press conference today, and he talked about the Western Carolina game a little bit right at the top of the press conference. He said that Rico Dowdle and Mason Zandy, key players for the Gamecocks. Dowdle was the offensive player of the game against Western Carolina. Of course, he ran for 226 yards. That was the sixth highest total ever by a Gamecock in a single game. So Muschamp talked about those two. He talked about third down conversions. The Gamecock offense very solid in that department, particularly in the first half. But he was critical of the Gamecocks' tackling effort. He said poor tackling was a real problem, and that's something they're working on this week. Darius English, the defensive player of the game in the win over Western Carolina. Ball Hawk Award went to DJ Smith, and it was Deebo Samuel, the special teams player of the game. So there was a problem with the teleconference that Muschamp has with the media every Sunday. So he talked about Western Carolina to start things off today, but then everything turned to Clemson, Wes, and he had a lot of praise for the Tigers, talked about Clemson averaging over 40 points a ball game and 500 yards of offense per game. He praised Deshaun Watson. He said, you just can't add any more adjectives when you describe Deshaun Watson. He said so many good things about him. He also praised their wide receivers. He said they're extremely explosive. And he said that Wayne Gallman's the guy that he really likes, a guy that runs behind his pads and a guy that stood out on film. He said Jordan Leggett presents matchup problems, and that'll be a factor for Saturday's game between South Carolina and Clemson. And Muschamp also said that he's got a lot of respect for Dabo and the job that Dabo does. So a lot of high praise for the Clemson Tigers to start today's press conference, Wes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all knew that Clemson has a number of weapons, both offensively and defensively. They've got a lot of really good players, and Muschamp listed off a bunch of them. And I think from a defensive standpoint, you look at this Clemson team and you say they can hurt you about any way that that they want to. That they've not necessarily been outstanding in the running game this year, but you look at the fact South Carolina has not really stopped the run incredibly well this year. You look at a guy like Wayne Gallman, you look at Deshaun Watson's ability to, either run the football himself or extend plays with his legs, and then get the football down the field. You just look at all the weapons they have, and you say this is a team that can hurt you in about any way. And then if you cover just about every regular option, then they go to Jordan Leggett, their big tight end, who is a matchup nightmare. So, I think Muschamp sort of set it up for us to, you just see that they've got a bunch of weapons. And then I think on the other side, one thing that seems to be a common thread, everybody knows Brent Venables does a good job with those guys, but is their physicality up front. They're very talented in the front seven. It's the team that I think as far as their front four's ability to get upfield and create pressure is very, very good. And, you look at Boulware at linebacker. He's sort of, I've often sort of thought of Boulware as being their version of DJ Swearinger. Not obviously the same position, but just as far as an emotional leader for that defense. He's not the most talented guy on that defense, but he's a really good football player and sort of makes that defense go. So, I think if you look at it on both sides, obviously there's reasons to worry if you're a South Carolina fan when you look at these matchups.
Wes Muschamp talked about Deshaun Watson, and he said exactly what you said, that Watson has the ability to extend plays. Muschamp said that the Gamecocks will try to limit Deshaun Watson because you're not going to stop him. So Muschamp went on to say that the Gamecocks just need to execute the defense. They don't need to do anything superhuman, but clearly this Clemson offense will be the best that South Carolina's faced all year.
Yeah, and I think with Watson, you particularly, I always look at third downs with him. This is the guy that the money downs, what they talk about, third down or fourth down or late game downs, when he needs a drive, that's when Deshaun Watson seems to be at his absolute best. Even last year, with the 3-win South Carolina team that had just lost to the Citadel. South Carolina scored to cut that game to 3, in the fourth quarter. And then on the very next drive, Deshaun Watson stood in there and, on third downs, delivered throw after throw and took his team down the field to extend the game again and sort of put the game away. So, I think this is a guy that just, when the importance ramps up, he gets even better. And I think you look at what Western Carolina's quarterback was able to do against South Carolina to extend plays on third down, to use his feet. There were several times where South Carolina had good position defensively, but had missed tackles that led to first downs. So, I think, no matter how big of a South Carolina fan you are out there, or, if you think South Carolina's going to win this game, anybody's going to look at this matchup and say that that's something that South Carolina has to worry about and that Sean Watson's very, very good at.
Gamecock Central Radio, Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell today talking about Will Muschamp's midweek press conference. South Carolina getting ready for Clemson, 7:35 kick Saturday up in Tiger Town. And we invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. We've got a free phone app that's available on the App Store and on Google Play. You can subscribe to our podcast, search for Gamecock Central Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, and other popular services, or just visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Wes Muschamp talked about the Clemson defense as well, said they're multiple up front. He said that Ben Boulware and Kendall Joseph, very active for the Clemson defense. And he said that Joseph is a player that caught his eye on film in preparation for this game on Saturday night. And he talked about Brent Venables and the job that he does with the Clemson defense. And he says that Venables really lets the Tigers' front seven play. So Muschamp said that there are some similarities between the Florida defense and the Clemson defense. And, Florida's defense really shut the door on the Gamecocks' running game. South Carolina had virtually no ground attack in that loss to Florida a couple of weeks ago. So, Clemson's good on offense, but they got a lot of athletes on defense as well, and that'll be a problem for South Carolina Saturday night.
Yeah, I think ultimately, Emerson, this game is going to come down to can South Carolina's offensive line give Jake Bentley a chance. We looked at that Florida defense and, sort of said the same thing, that Bentley's going to need some time, and obviously, I thought that was their worst performance, and a lot of that is because of who they're matching up with. This is a game of matchups, football is. I think, again, now, does Clemson have the shutdown defensive backs that Florida had? Probably not. These are guys that South Carolina can probably get open against. Deebo Samuel, Brian Edwards going to have big games. Both those guys are. They can get open on these guys, but, all that is going to be dependent on South Carolina's ability to give Bentley time to get the ball down the field, because I think this is a game that, South Carolina obviously is going to have to use its short passing game to an extent, but you can't do that all game. At some point you have to stretch the field. By this point, the film is out there. South Carolina, likes to use the horizontal passing game. They like to use the screen game on the perimeter. Clemson knows that. I thought Western Carolina did a good job of sitting on some of those plays early on. So, if you're South Carolina, I think you're going to have to find a way to be creative, find a way to get vertical in the passing game. And, I don't know what the answers are. I think Pitt did a good job of sort of scheming up some ways to slow down Clemson's defensive line and their pass rush and make them think a little bit versus, just rushing upfield. And I thought that was outstanding game planning from Pitt. But, Pitt's been a really good offense this year. So, and they've had a pretty good offensive line, I think. So, if I circle just one thing about this game that I say, what needs to happen for South Carolina to have a chance, I think you would say that South Carolina's offensive line is going to have to give Bentley time, because, he's a kid that I still think when Bentley is turned loose and really has a chance to go have to throw the ball around, we still haven't seen what all this kid's capable of, but, it all starts with giving him a chance.
The front seven, the strength of the Clemson defense. And, one of the keys for me for Saturday night, Wes, will be the Gamecocks' ability to block Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins. I think those two players will be key in this ball game Saturday night. The Gamecocks are going to have to find a way to keep those two guys out of the Gamecock backfield, like you said, to give Jake Bentley some time to throw. Bentley sacked 5 times against Florida. sacked 6 times against Tennessee. These are the 2 of the more athletic defenses that the Gamecocks have faced this year. Clemson every bit as good, if not better, than those 2. So 7:35 kick Saturday night up in Clemson. Emerson Phillips and Wes Mitchell with you here on Gamecock Central Radio. Glad to have you along today. Wes, Muschamp was asked extensively about the rivalry, and he fielded a number of questions today about the rivalry. He said that it's important for players to understand the history of the rivalry, especially the young players, and he said that's particularly important for us this year because we've got such a young football team. So he talked about his first day on the job. He said that, he was walking around the building, first day on the job, and Carolina people are talking about beating Clemson. He said the competition between the 2 schools is very healthy and good, and he said that he and his staff talk with the team every day about winning our state, whether that's recruiting or beating Clemson. Winning the state of South Carolina, a real priority for Gamecock football.
Yeah, I thought some of that was interesting, Emerson, because to me it seemed like Muschamp was sort of walking that line between this is just another game. You have to prepare very, very hard for every game, while also admitting, rivalries aren't just another game, because he said multiple times, and the players said multiple times, this is the preparation is exactly the same. He said that South Carolina didn't need to try to play like they're superhuman. They needed to just play within the defense, play within the offense, and do their jobs. But within the same, structure, he said things like, we talk about winning the state every single day. One of the mottos the entire season has been beat the East, win the state. So it's almost like, okay, now that the week is here, the preparation has to be exactly the same because nobody wants to put, he said, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and put all your focus on one team and make the moment too big. But at the same time, it's almost like the importance of this rivalry and winning the state has been sort of ingrained in the team all season long. So, I think, everybody can talk about how it's just another game all they want. But once you line up and as much as you hear about this rivalry in the state, there's no question this one means a little bit more.
Yeah, he did kind of walk a fine line today. At one point he said, we don't need to be motivated by the opponent we play, but clearly Muschamp knows that the media going to ask questions about the Clemson game, and the fans want to hear him talk about the Clemson game and talk about how important it is to the program. So at one point Muschamp was asked what some of the fans have said to him. He goes out and speaks at Gamecock Club functions throughout the year, and he's met a lot of fans during his first year on the job, and he was asked what were some of the things that fans have said to him about the rivalry that stand out, and he said, I can't say any of that publicly. I'll get in trouble. And he paused for a moment, and he said, I'm being serious. The media laughed, but he said, no, I'm not kidding. I can't repeat any of that stuff. And Muschamp also said that one game never affects a recruit's decision. Wes, he was asked, how the game or the outcome of the game, how does it affect recruiting? Muschamp said that as far as he knows, the result of any game or the outcome of any game has never been a deciding factor in any recruit's mind. And, if there is a kid out there that you're recruiting that makes his decision based on the outcome of a single game, maybe that's not a kid you really want after all. So Muschamp said that he didn't think the outcome of any one game affects recruiting, but clearly having the upper hand in the rivalry certainly doesn't hurt. So he's aware of that as well. And Wes, one of the other things that Muschamp talked about, in fact, at the very close of the press conference today, he said that, and we've talked about the fact that Muschamp is football 24/7. And I don't think that was ever more evident than today when he was asked about his plans for Thanksgiving. He said, he's got plans for Thanksgiving, but he said Thanksgiving is just a meal. It's not a day. And I think a lot of the media guys were taken aback by that because they're not used to that, but it gives you some insight into what a football coach is thinking about Thanksgiving week. He's got his eyes on the prize on Saturday night. He's not worried about Turkey Day dinner.
Yeah, he's got his eyes on Clemson. And I kind of got to thinking when he made that comment, first of all, about a recruit doesn't make a decision based on one game. And, these guys South Carolina's recruiting right now, they know South Carolina's in rebuilding mode. So if South Carolina were to lose to Clemson, as most everyone expects, you're probably not going to lose a guy based on this one game. But to me, the other side of that is if South Carolina somehow were to find a way to beat Clemson, because if South Carolina loses, everybody in the state is mad, but it's a 20-second clip on SportsCenter, Like it's an expected result. To me, the only way this becomes huge in recruiting is if South Carolina finds a way to win, because then it's, wow, South Carolina is already, for one, that knocks Clemson out of the playoff. Everybody on ESPN's talking about it, and everybody's talking about how Muschamp has this thing well further along than anyone expected. So, to me, if South Carolina lose, there's really nothing to lose for South Carolina here, but there is a ton to potentially gain. But yeah, and like you said, we've talked about that before, but Muschamp is a football-focused individual, and that was very clear. I don't know about you, but I eat Thanksgiving leftovers for dinner on Thanksgiving too. Yep. So, and I probably, pass out from a food coma watching football, and then eat a little bit more food that afternoon. So I'm going to have to slightly disagree with Muschamp on that. But I guess if you're a major college football player, and you probably don't need all that just all that heavy eating on you a few games before the game. A few days before the game.
Yeah, I think most of us would agree that it's a feast, and it's an all-day kind of deal for a lot of folks listening today, but a little bit different story when you got a game to coach on Saturday night. So Muschamp said that the Gamecocks got practice on Thursday morning. He was looking forward to getting in early and having a practice, and he said that the staff would watch film, and then they'd watch some more film, and he'll fit Thanksgiving Day dinner in with his family at some point, but he's thinking about the game on Saturday night. So, interesting insight.
He didn't know what he was going to eat either.
Yeah, he was asked what he was going to eat, and he said, I don't know, I'll figure it out when I sit down. So
it sounded like whatever Miss Muschamp serves up.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that he's real picky. He's going to have some with the family, and he will spend time with his family on Thursday, but he's also going to spend time with the Gamecock football team. So walk through on Friday, and the Gamecocks at Clemson on Saturday. Wes, it's a fun time of year. The holidays are here, and Thanksgiving's a lot of fun for a lot of folks because you get to spend time with the family, and then you got the Carolina-Clemson game the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That's become a new tradition here in the Palmetto State, and we look forward to the Palmetto Bowl. It's going to be fun on Saturday night. Wes, the Gamecocks, huge underdogs here, about 24-point underdogs as we record on this Tuesday.
Yeah, huge underdogs, but a huge opportunity. I'm looking forward to following this thing as the week goes along and seeing if South Carolina can make this a game. And, of course, we're going to have complete coverage of it all on GamecockCentral.com. So it should be fun. I'm excited to stuff my face on Thursday. And then you got some great football games on Friday, too, some college games. And then you sort of, the way Saturday is set up, if you're a college football fan, it's a dream. You got Ohio State, Michigan kicking off at noon. Then you've got the Iron Bowl at 3:30. Then you got Clemson, South Carolina at 7:35. That's about a perfect 3-day stretch there, if you ask me.
Muschamp was also asked about some of the upset wins that his teams have been a part of, be it as a head coach at Florida or an assistant coach at the stops that he's made over the years, and he said none of those wins were upsets to me. So we'll see if the Gamecocks have got anything for Clemson on Saturday night. We're looking forward to it, Wes. We appreciate your time today. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, man. You too. Hope everybody else out there does as well.
All right, that's my man Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips. We wish you a happy Thanksgiving as well, and we'll be back next week to talk about the Carolina-Clemson game right here on Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for being with us.